Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool, and there is something called the curb cut effect. And what that is a phenomenon where something was designed for a specific use. In the case of what it's named after, the curb cut was designed to assist wheelchairs in moving, off of a sidewalk, across the street, and back onto a sidewalk. We all know them because we all use them, but that's the point. It was designed for something very specific. However, it turns out it's incredibly useful for about everybody, whether you're walking, running, pushing a stroller, riding a bike, a scooter. I mean, suddenly this thing that was designed for a very specific task has universal, not only use, but appreciation. And I think that the hose pick from Snap-on or any other brand fits in that as well, but also now seal pullers. Now the hose pick, and this is kind of a pretty aggressive one here, was designed to free up the hoses that were attached around some sort of a nozzle without hopefully breaking the hose or being able to reuse the hose. That would be good. But there are all kinds of different shapes. In fact, this is one that I had made by a Snap-on franchisee for me using an extra long one. That hose pick there, I use it for all kinds of stuff. Occasionally hoses, but mostly other odds and ends. And what I've discovered is when these little seal pullers came out, I used to call this kind of a hockey stick or something, it was a smoother version. Didn't damage stuff because these kinds are incredibly pokey. That was the point. It was almost like having a little knife, so you could wedge it into the hose and then free that up. And this one was an extra large one. But I don't use these mostly for hoses. I use them for anything else. That's that curb cut effect. And the same is true with these seal pullers. Rarely do I pull a seal, but instead I use them anytime I want something smooth, a little bit of prying, a little bit of movement between two edges, things like that. These are just incredible, and it's surprising because until I had them, I didn't try to use anything like this because in my tool chest it didn't exist. So instead I used pry bars and screwdrivers and all kinds of other stuff. Well, these are some Olsa tool ones that I got. This is an excellent set, and they are the same kind of seal pulling because they're smooth. Look at that. Look at the machining on those. Just outstanding. 3 different types here. And that suddenly allows you to do stuff that you didn't or you weren't able to do before or didn't know you could do it in a certain way. Well, Snap-on now has this. And check this out. They are calling this, well here, I'll show you the packaging. This is the 2-piece Instinct soft grip short radiator pick set. See what it does? Removes radiator hoses from clamps fitting tight engine areas. That's because they're short. Compact design, straight blades, hook face blades, back towards handle. So anyway, you can see how this works. However, look at that. It's all rounded off. No longer is it this sharp style. Of course, these are still there. They have great applications. This is a little bit different. And they make it in a set here. This is the model number for this pair is the SGA-S102B and then G for green. But look at those things. Originally, I was after this guy, and I thought there are just times where that kind of a tool looks incredibly useful. Did notice here there are some machining marks under the chroming, kind of interesting. Snap-on's trying to get these things out. This side, very little. But there they are. So this actually acts as a pry bar. You could use it as a seal puller if you can wedge that in there, which is it is pretty small, but is it as small as this tip? No, not really, if you look at that. It is a very stout, very strong chunk of metal. And all of a sudden, it's like all the things I could do with this. Wait, this might actually take the place of pry bars when I'm using pry bars on more sensitive stuff. But I didn't know there was an option because maybe there wasn't. So anyway, I got a set of these. They're not cheap. This was about $70. I think you can buy them about 35 bucks a piece if you want. There's the model numbers on this guy here, just this little shoehorn one. This is the SGAS 1714B, and then this one with this kind of reverse hook. The model number on that guy, if you contact your dealer and ask for it, is the SGAS 1713B. So there they are. Do I like them? Yeah, absolutely. Do I have a direct use for these? Not yet. I mean, obviously, confined areas, you know, trying to get radiator hoses, things like that. I always have extras of these lying around. You never know, especially overlanding. Don't leave home without them. But one of the things that I started thinking about is, in the old days, there were these hook-handled things that used to use for all kinds of stuff around the farm. It was just basically a larger hook. I've seen them repurposed for holding shopping bags, obviously for moving hay bales. But suddenly, wait a minute, I had a huge gap in my toolbox for something like this because I didn't have one. But what is it for? Beyond, you know, hoses? Well, everything where it works. This is the curb cut effect in all its glory. Suddenly, they designed something very specific for hoses, and it looks like this will work wonderfully in all kinds of other uses. Let me know what you think. And with that, Doc out.